Good evening and welcome to the second presentation in our series of African Bird Fair virtual talks with BirdLife South Africa in partnership with MSC Cruises. My name is Andrew de Block and I will be your host tonight.
My name's Adam Riley and I'm doing the presentation on Ethiopia this evening. So since we've lost Andrew, maybe he had load shedding click in at 7 where he is or something. I will just carry on with the slideshow if that's okay with you all. So just give me a moment, please, to set up here. Okay, and we are going to slideshow. Okay, great. So Andrew hasn't introduced me. So once again, Adam Riley, great to be here. I am from Hilton in KZN. I'm the owner of Rock Jumper Birding Tours, and I've been fortunate to travel all around the world, including Ethiopia quite a few times on birdwatching trips. So this is a slideshow I put together a while ago called Ethiopia's Unique Birds, Wildlife, and Culture. So Ethiopia, slightly smaller than South Africa. It's at 1.1 million square kilometers compared to South Africa's 1.2 million square kilometers, but there's 120 million people compared to our 59 million. Okay, Andrew, are you back? Okay, anyhow, so yeah, they have this incredibly high population density, 120 million compared to our 59 million people. So it is actually the most populous landlocked country in the world, and this has the second largest population in Africa after Nigeria. It's also the only African kingdom that wasn't colonized, Liberia being the only other country that wasn't officially colonized in Africa. It's got the most UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Africa. And it was a very powerful kingdom in the 3rd and 4th centuries. It was actually considered the Aksumite kingdom based in Ethiopia, was considered one of the 4 powerful kingdoms of the period, with being Rome, Persia, and China as the others. And it ruled large parts of Northeast Africa as well as Southern Arabia. The capital of Ethiopia is Addis Ababa, quite a new city, only founded in 1886. Has a very large population, over 5 million people, and is the headquarters of the African Union. Ethiopia has really unique heritage and culture. It's like nowhere else in the world, really. The traditional cuisine is a variety of meat stews and vegetable dishes served on top of a sourdough flatbread called injera, which is made out of an endemic wheat called teff. And you basically eat that with your hands, and everyone shares one big bowl of injera, and break off some of the bread and dip it in the sauces, and away you go. This is a typical pot that's used for cooking this injera bread. They also use a unique script called GS, which is one of the oldest alphabets still in use in the world. And the Ethiopian calendar follows the ancient Egyptian calendar and is actually 7 years and 3 months behind our calendar. So one of the logos of the Ethiopian Tourism Board has come to Ethiopia and be 7 years younger. Even the way they record time during the day is different. So 6 a.m. in the morning is 00. So 7 a.m. is 1, and so on. So it can get pretty confusing when you're organizing things. Large parts of the country are still very, very rural. When I first started going to Ethiopia, they said there was less than 1,000 miles of surface road in the country. So a lot of people still just walking on the roads. A lot of transport is still undertaken on donkey back. And many villages and communities still have no road access. And even the roads that are there are pretty basic. I mean, this is a typical day traveling through Ethiopia on some pretty rough country. Just some typical scenes. To feed this many people is very high density agriculture. This is an aerial view of much of the highlands of Ethiopia. But fortunately, there are still wonderful wilderness areas and places for birding, which we'll get into. One of the most famous sites in Ethiopia is Lalibela. This is quite in the north of Ethiopia. And this is a very famous Christian site. So Ethiopia was the second country in the world to adopt Christianity as the official religion. This was in about 324 AD. Armenia was the first country, and was after two Christian brothers were shipwrecked off the coast of Eritrea, modern Eritrea, and they became slaves to the emperor, and then converted them to Christianity. And the Ethiopian form of Christianity has really changed over the millennia. It was isolated by Muslims from other Christian nations, and they came up with their own form of Christianity. And this particular site, Lalibela, was constructed in the 11th century, once Ethiopia no longer had access to the Holy Land. And King Lalibela actually decided to build his own Jerusalem. And he created or basically built 11 huge churches, which were hewn out of the living rock. And this is one of them. This is the Church of St. George. So basically, they cut a huge big hole, many stories deep in the rock, and leave the central column standing, which then they carve into this intricate church. And they're all linked with these tunnels, underground tunnels from one church to the other. Fascinating place to explore, with every room having something different. This is a cross cut into the living stone. A lot of the very unique Ethiopian crosses and priests, and the little holes and crevices all over the place. And you peer in one and there's a skeleton, and you peer in another and there's a hermit who hasn't left for 30 years. And all these beautiful illuminated scripts with their GS script. This is another site called Gondar. These were medieval castles built in the 1600s. Here's another view of Gondar, and amazing churches with really incredible artwork, unique to Ethiopia. This is actually the ceiling of the church. And they also have their own rituals, their different saints and biblical stories. Okay, now we've moved on to the far southwest of Ethiopia. This is the Omo Valley. So in Ethiopia, there's 80 ethno-linguistic groups, and 12 of them are isolated to this Omo Valley. And in fact, the very first anatomically modern human specimens have been found in this valley. So that was apparently about 200,000 years. So it's been occupied by modern humans for a very long time. And it's actually recognized as a cultural World Heritage Site. So some of the tribes that still exist here, these are the Hammars, these beautiful ladies. They number about 50,000 people. They're one of the largest ethnic groups living in the Omo Valley. And the Hammar women are easily identifiable by their brick red hair braids, beautiful beaded jewelry, and animal skin clothes designed to imitate gazelles. They also have really interesting rituals and ceremonies. So one of the most famous is the bull jumping ceremony, where before a man is allowed to get married or enter manhood and marry, he has to run backwards and forwards across a row of bulls. And during the ceremony, the female relatives of the man allow themselves to be severely whipped with saplings and forming these permanent scars you can see on their backs. And this creates a lifelong bond between the sisters of the man and the man, who then obviously will marry and kind of be associated with another family. Another tribe are the Karo, and they live along the banks of the Omo River and basically do what is called flood retreat cultivation, where they till the fertile soils deposited by the annual flooding of the river. And they're famed for their body and face paintings and also scarification. So these are typical Karo men and ladies. And this is a Karo village. In a very remote area of Ethiopia, beyond Mago National Park, we went down and visited another tribe called the Mercy. The first person we saw was, it was still quite dark, was this young man with Stanawing nightjar wing feathers as part of his headdress. And so the Mercy are famous for the incredible lip plates that the women wear. At around the age of 15, the girls apparently have a choice of undergoing this extremely painful process of having their lower lip sliced and a small clay or wooden lip plate inserted. And then as the wound heals, this is replaced by larger and larger plates until they're able to stretch their lower lip over the back of their heads, and they can wear these huge lip plates. There's several theories circulate as to the reason why they do this. One of them is that it's to actually make the woman less attractive to the slave raiders. And apparently it does also increase their bride price. But anyway, it's something that still carries on. And yeah, here's one of the more elderly Mercy ladies. Another typical scene, there's a lot of firearms down in this valley. It's a very interesting place to visit. So this is a lady, another younger lady. You can also see the scarification on her arms. And this is what it looks like when they remove their lip plates. So this area of southern Ethiopia has these incredibly tall termite mounds. And there's actually two bird species associated with them, which I'll discuss. But firstly, just with regards to birds, Ethiopia has over 900 bird species, so more than South Africa. And until Eritrea became independent, they had the highest count of endemics. They've lost quite a lot because many of them are shared with Eritrea. But there's still 15 endemics to Ethiopia and another 40 near endemics. So one of the birds associated with the termite mounds in the south of Ethiopia is this very unique crow called Stresemann's bush crow. Very unusual, small black and white crow with blue face patch, and occurs in a tiny, tiny area of southern Ethiopia. Here's another shot of it. And with the exact same distribution is this beautiful white-winged swallow, and also nests in the termite mounds. And it was a large mystery why these two birds had this tiny range in the south of Ethiopia with millions of square kilometers or hectares of apparently the same habitat all around. And what is believed is well, studies have now shown there's actually a thermocline where the area where they occur is sort of slightly cooler than all the surrounding bushveld. And as a result of that, these two bird species have survived. Another critically endangered species that you get in Ethiopia is the Sidamo or lark. It's endemic to one small plain, although additional populations have been found in another site of Ethiopia, and it's been lumped with a species in Eritrea. And this is a sister species, in Somaliland. This is a sister species of Rudd's lark. So there's only two species in the Heteromerophora genus. Very, very rare bird. Another one of Ethiopia's real specials is Salvadori siren, just known from a couple of locations in southeastern Ethiopia towards the Somali border. One of the key targets of a trip to Ethiopia is this Prince Ruspoli's Turco. Prince Ruspoli was an Italian nobleman who came out to Ethiopia in the 1800s and went exploring, and he discovered this bird. And during the course of his journey in Ethiopia, he was trampled by an elephant. And this bird was not seen for nearly 100 years. No one knew where he'd found it. and only in the last sort of about 40 years or 50 years was the bird rediscovered along these dry riverbeds in southeastern Ethiopia towards the Somali border, but really an absolutely spectacular Turako. Some of the other birds that you see in these drier areas of Ethiopia include species such as vulturine guinea fowl, another spectacular and large species of guinea fowl. This is the white-bellied go-away bird, one of the 3 go-away birds in the Turako family. This is a cute little guy called D'Arnold's barbet. They have this really cool little display where they wag their tails and bow their heads. Quite similar to our crested barbet. This is the red and yellow barbet, and he's exclusively nests in termite mounds. They also have some wonderful, wonderful species of starlings. This spectacular beast is the golden-breasted starling. And here we have Shelley's starling and the famous superstar or superb starling, which is a common bird across East Africa. And a sister species to our pied starling. This is white-crowned starling, which is a near endemic to Ethiopia. Through the center of Ethiopia, you get the Rift Valley. And along this Rift Valley, there's a large series of lakes, which is excellent for birding. This is Lake Langano. Some of them are very deep lakes, such as Lake Hora, and some of them are very shallow. This chap, I remember we're on this particular lake and full of crocodiles, massive crocodiles all over. And here was this fisherman on this raft, virtually at water level, poling across this lake. Incredibly brave man. And you also get some amazing cave systems. This is Safa Ma, one of the largest caves in Africa, and it's really quite fun exploring deep inside these caves. And obviously this area hosts a lot of great birds. And what's really interesting about the Ethiopian culture is that they don't kill birds. So nowhere else in Africa can you get as close to groups of, to many of the birds. They're quite used to people and not disturbed by them. This is a typical scene on one of the lakes, Lake Langano, with fishermen in the background full of marabou storks and stilts and pelicans in the back. And, if you just lie down, this marabou storks come all around you and you can get amazing photographs of their beauty if you consider it that. Also pelicans all around you. And nowhere can you get photographs of many of the African waterfowl as well as you can in Ethiopia. This is African pygmy goose, but they just basically swim all around you. Other birds that you get in these lakes, things like black egret or black heron, with their unique feeding display. You get large flocks of black-crowned crane. This is the sister species to our grey-crowned. And also very healthy numbers of Palearctic waders, many of which are very rare down in South Africa, but up in Ethiopia, things like this is a black-tailed godwit, but common and spotted redshank and teeming stint and species like that are quite easy to find in the southern summer months. Again, malachite kingfishers, great place to get photographs because they're super chilled. Some of the mammals that you get in this part of Ethiopia include things such as the Guriza colobus, this beautiful black and white and thickly pelted colobus monkey. Here's a close-up view. This is the grivet, a closely related species to our vervet monkey, doesn't have the same black hands. And this is a species that's quite rare. This is called De Brazza's monkey that we found on one of our trips. You can see it here gorging on fig fruit. A couple of birds of the forests and that are around these Rift Valley lakes include another near endemic. This is white-cheeked Turako. Here we have the black-winged lovebird, and you get them in quite good numbers. And the banded barbet. This species replaces the red-winged starling. This is called the pale-billed starling. And another near endemic is the brown rump seed eater. A lot of more typical African species, Ayers hawk eagle occur in quite good numbers here. I see them fairly regularly. This is African goshawk, quite different looking to our African goshawk, but they do change over their range and is the same species. Here we have Clapperton spurfowl, and the same species of trogon as we have. This is Narina trogon. On the large trees in the woodlands, spotted creepers are quite common. Wonderful, wonderful birds to see. And these Abyssinian bee-eaters are absolutely beautiful little birds. And we often bump into them spotlighting at night when you have a whole group of them all cuddled up together. A lot of species of typical African birds. This is Nubian woodpecker. This is the same species of wryneck as we have, red-throated wryneck, but you can see the rufous coloration extends right onto the belly. So it looks quite different to ours. Also good numbers of Palearctic migrants. This is one example. This is a blue rock thrush. They don't come as far down as us. Wonderful sunbirds, such as aptly named beautiful sunbird and the shining sunbird, also an absolute stunner. And seed eaters such as this purple grenadier. Okay, moving slightly northeast in Ethiopia. We're now in the Awash area. This is towards Djibouti. And this area is actually most famous for the hominid discovery of Australopithecus afarensis. And then most famous as Lucy was the particular individual found in this valley in 1974 by Donald Johanson. It is one of the most complete and best preserved adult Australopithecine fossils ever uncovered. Lucy is estimated to have lived about 3.2 million years ago and quite changed the view on hominid evolution at the time of its discovery. Nowadays, the Afar tribe predominate this area. This is a typical Afar homestead. They're semi-nomadic people, so they can pick up and move off in a day. They don't really like being photographed, so I don't have many photos. This is a group of ladies and a young girl of the Afar tribe. They're predominantly camel and goat herders, living in this valley and in the national park itself. And even though large numbers of tribal people do live in the national park, you still get lions, and we see and hear them fairly regularly on our trips to Awash National Park. You also get the oryx, Bisa oryx, and Africa's most unusual zebra. This is Grevy's zebra, very much larger than our Burchell zebra. You can see the unstriped belly and very fine striping. Quite a few other species of animals that you get there. This is Sumerling's gazelle and the very strange gerenuk, which kind of looks like an impala with a stretched neck, and they're often on their back, on their hindquarters, browsing on the highest leaves that they can reach. Several species of dik-diks occur, including gunters. And you also get this cool guy occurring across this part of Ethiopia. This is a Hamadryas baboon. And this is a species that appears in ancient Egyptian art and is considered sacred as the god Thoth, a major and powerful deity with many roles, including being the scribe of the gods. And large numbers of them, or troops of them, are found in this part of Ethiopia. Other typical African animals. In fact, I saw my very first aardwolf in Awash National Park many years ago. We see aardvark on our trips there, all the way down to little elephant shrews. Some of the typical birds here, it's probably the richest place in the world for bustards. You can see up to 6 species in a day. species including the largest flying bird in the world, the Kori bustard, which we also have here in South Africa. But other species such as Arabian bustard, which is much rarer, northern white-bellied bustard, buff-crested bustard. And what's quite fun to observe here is you often get the northern carmine beaters actually use the bustards and other animals as riding posts and sally off and catch insects as these bustards are walking across the landscape. That was on a Kori. Here's one on an Arabian bustard, and even on Abyssinian ground hornbill, which is the northern sister species of our southern ground hornbill. And here is this bird that does it. And strangely enough, the southern carmine doesn't seem to adopt this behavior. A couple of the other typical species that are found here, this is the beautiful Liechtenstein sandgrass. Here you have black-headed lapwing in dry open areas. And you still get Egyptian vultures in quite good numbers. This is the eastern chanting goshawk as opposed to our southern chanting. You can notice the yellow sear on it. But the pygmy falcon that you get up there is the same species as our pygmy falcon. The green pigeon is slightly different. This is called Bruce's green pigeon. And you can see the yellow belly on this bird, which separates one of the features separating it from our African green pigeon. Rosy patch bushshrike is another fairly common bird, sort of behaves like a bokmakeri running on the ground, and also very noisy like a bokmakeri. And this is one of the rarest birds in Ethiopia. You only get it on very isolated areas of lava flow, and it's called a somber rock chat. Another phenomenon I've seen here is the huge flocks of quelea, just absolutely millions and millions of quelea. Which is always wonderful to see, quite a spectacle. Okay, we've now moved up into the Ethiopian highlands, which are the largest continuous mountain range in Africa. The Bali Mountains National Park covers 2,200 square kilometers, and elevation of goes up to 4,377 meters. This is very typical habitat up there, very misty in the early mornings. You get these giant lobelias that you can see in the background. These plants grow up to about 6 meters tall. Here's a little bit later in the day, very typical habitat in this Afro-alpine meadows. And then you get beautiful forests on the more sheltered sides of the mountains. This is called Hirena forest. And it still actually has lions and packs of wild dog living in this forest, a huge forest. The Bali Mountains is the only place where you get, or one of the only places where you get the mountain nyala, a species that was only described in 1910. And there's just a few thousand individuals left. They live in montane woodlands at between 3 and 3,400 meters. Some of the other wildlife in this area, this is Menelik's bushbuck and Abyssinian klipspringer. There's an endemic monkey there called the Bali monkey. This is Abyssinian hyrax, Stark's hare. And in fact, the highest density of rodents of any place in the world occurs in these highlands of Ethiopia. This is the giant root rat. And they estimate up to about 2,600 of these root rats occur per square kilometer. There you can see it with these huge teeth, lots of other species. These are meadow mice. And as a result, you get many predators of these rodents. Nowhere in the world have I seen serval as commonly as I've seen in these Ethiopian mountains in the reserves. And one of our tours even took a photograph of a black serval that I haven't personally seen it, but we do sometimes bump into them up there. And this is actually a black leopard that was photographed by Chris Kelly in the Hirena forest on the side of the Bali Mountains. But the most famous carnivore of this area is the Ethiopian wolf, which is a highly specialized feeder of Afro-alpine rodents. And is one of the world's rarest canids, and Africa's most endangered carnivore. And they're quite different to normal wolves. They actually hunt solitarily and almost exclusively on these large rodents which occur here on these meadows. And one of the reasons they're so endangered is because they are susceptible to rabies and other diseases from dogs and so on in the area. And this was a little den with cubs, which was super cool. Some of the other typical species, there's a population of breeding wattle cranes up in this area. This is the near endemic ibis, kind of replaces the hardy-daw, not as noisy. This is called the wattled ibis, and you can see the wattle just at its chin. Here's another near endemic. This is the chestnut-naped francolin, and another special bird of the area, the blue-winged goose. Roget's rail, usually think of rails as being in the reed beds. These guys run around in the open meadows, usually near water, but very cool species to see. And another bird that's near endemic that's becoming very rare nowadays is the spot-breasted lapwing. There's also a near endemic pigeon. This is the white-collared pigeon. And this is sub-Saharan Africa's only population of red-billed choughs. So choughs, there's two species of choughs. They're in the corvid family, Palearctic species, occurring from Britain all across Asia, or Europe and Asia, and also North Africa, Morocco, etc. And the only sub-Saharan population is actually in these Bali Mountains. This is the Ethiopian form of ground scraper thrush, which is very, very different to our ground scraper thrush in looks and call, and it occurs in high elevation grasslands. So if it hasn't been split, I think it's about to be split as a different species. They also have their own endemic longclaw, Abyssinian longclaw. You can see it's somewhat similar to our Cape longclaw, but also different. And here's another species you get in the more woodland areas, the dwarf forests up there. This is a brown parasoma, which is related to our tit babblers. On the ground, we share the species with Ethiopia. This is the quailfinch. Abyssinian long-eared owl was one of the rarest birds of Ethiopia. Up until recently, there were only a few sightings of this bird. But now with local guides and so on, we generally have it staked out and are able to see this wonderful long-eared owl. Also, often occurring low down, more in weedy environment, is the endemic Abyssinian woodpecker, quite a small, very little woodpecker. Another rare bird near endemic is the yellow-fronted parrot, and with slightly wider range. Here we have the Abyssinian ground thrush. So this is a relative of our orange ground thrush in the Zuthera genus. And finally, another endemic is the Abyssinian catbird in the babbler family, so related to our bush blackcap. It's probably its closest relative. Moving to the other side of the Rift Valley is another montane area. And this is the Simeon Mountains National Park, a large national park, about 220 square kilometers. A little bit drier than the Bali Mountains. Still some woodlands on some of the slopes, but not the lush forests that you get in the Bali Mountains. And a wonderful place for raptors. Lammergeier or bearded vultures are quite commonly seen here, come down and perch regularly. This is a site where we had a lammergeier in the background and Ripple's griffin in the foreground. You also get the near endemic thick-billed raven. This is considered to be the world's largest passerine. It has this massive beak, very cool call. So it sounds like an old style computer game. And they really are big and impressive birds. Here's a headshot. Quite a few other species that you get up here, things like Ripple's chat, replaces sort of or fills a similar niche as our mountain wheatear. This is very similar to mocking cliff chat, but this is the white-winged cliff chat. And a highly isolated and rare species called Ankylosaurian occurs here in these mountains. Some of the mammals that you get, this is Walia ibex, which at one stage was thought to be extinct. There's still very small numbers of them, but they are protected and you can get to see them well. But my favorite of all the animals that occur up here are these guys. This is the gelada, and they're a very, very ancient group of primates. They're sometimes called gelada baboons, but they're not baboons. They sort of grass apes or grass monkeys. They're sometimes called. All of them are extinct except for this one. And basically they occur quite close to cliffs. So they spend their nights on these huge cliffs on the edge of the mountains. And then early in the morning, they come up off the cliffs and sit out and sun themselves. This is the male. It's a crazy looking animal. And you actually get these super troops of up to about 1,200 of these animals sitting out there. And they basically sun themselves and have these social interactions for a couple of hours before they head off and start foraging. And they feed exclusively on grasses and grass seeds. And one is able to actually just walk right into the middle of these animals and just sit in amongst them. And it really is a remarkable experience. I rate it as wonderful as seeing the mountain gorillas. And the social behavior is amazing. You have a dominant male with his harem of females and youngsters in amongst this much larger sort of group of families that coexist here. And they have fascinating behaviors. They're being studied quite extensively by primatologists to try help us unravel even human evolution and behavior. So they spend a lot of time preening each other and getting rid of parasites. And this is all part of creating the relationships. The males have this huge coat and incredible stagger, and a lot of their behavior is actually visual. So they have all these expressions and stare each other down. And although they have the largest canines in proportion to body size of any animal in the world, they actually seldom actually resort to physical contact, but they're able to flip their lips back and show off these huge canines and grimace and warn off potential other males straying into their families or to discipline younger ones. This was one of the really fascinating experiences we watched, and also the noises that they make. Apparently they have the closest repertoire to sounds of any creature other than humans. They can pronounce 5 of the 7 vowels in every single consonant, and they're constantly making noises and communicating with each other. And then once they've kind of sorted out the structure, or the social structure for the morning and warm themselves up, they break up into smaller bands, and they don't wander very far from these cliff faces, and they basically just forage on grass. So they sit on their haunches and they just pick grass and eat it, even though they have these huge teeth and canines. It really is quite something to watch. The little babies are a ton of fun. They look like wizened old dwarves, very curious, full of energy, actually very, very agile, jumping up and down, incredibly entertaining. It really is a special experience watching these primates. And that's just a little taste of Ethiopia, not just the birds, but the people and the culture and the animals. So I hope you enjoyed sort of a little exploration of Ethiopia through my eyes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Adam. Firstly, my apologies for disappearing. We had it wouldn't be an African bird fair without some African problems. So we had load shedding happening at Istel House, but I did catch most of your presentation, and I can see from the chat box that it was very well received. Thank you so much for sharing this incredible country. Ethiopia is one of the most exciting destinations. We over the recording. It really is one of the most exciting destinations, and you've done a fantastic job of showcasing exactly why. So yeah, thank you for spending the time with us tonight. Great.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
All right, so everyone, you do have a chance to ask Adam some questions, assuming that he's open to it. We have the Q&A box at the bottom of Zoom. So while you're thinking about what questions you might like to ask, I'm going to quickly do my pun for the bird fair that I was supposed to do at the beginning of this. So if you'll allow me, just while we are getting that all sorted. All right, so firstly, just thank you. That was the second and our third of 3 talks for the virtual aspect of our bird fair. As I was explaining, we have a sort of hybrid event with a lot of our events taking place on Saturday, but these 3 talks, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, this week, are how we're connecting with our international audience and our audience outside of Johannesburg. So thank you for tuning in tonight. I also just do need to mention our sponsors, particularly MSC Cruises, who have sponsored this specific aspect of the bird fair, as well as partnering with us as our headline sponsor this year. Tomorrow night, we have our third and last in our virtual talk series for the African Bird Fair. My colleague Christina Hagen will be hosting Dr. Melissa Lewis and a panel of BirdLife partners across Africa who are working to preserve specific iconic sites. And we also have our People's Choice Awards for our BirdLife South Africa photography competition, which is live. So go and vote for your favorite photograph. You will also win a prize if you're selected in the raffle. Then there is a coloring in competition currently on the go. Entries close tomorrow. So those younger members in the audience, get your crayons out and download Fancy's excellent Savannah sketch to win your prize of a signed book. We have our online auction going live right now. Go and find your bargains on books, on weekends away, on wine, on binoculars, cameras, you name it. It's out there on our online auction, so go engage with that. And then lastly, if you are not already a BirdLife South Africa member, you can become a member at a highly discounted rate on Saturday, the day of the bird fair. So note the code ABF2023. You can do that over email or in person. And then our program for the next day, I mentioned we have our third webinar, and then we have events all the way throughout the day for the African Bird Fair on Saturday. So various talks, workshops. I'm sure you'll agree it will be very exciting to take part. So hope to see many of you there on Saturday. So thanks, Adam. I see there's quite a few questions that have come through in the Q&A box. So we'll get to those now. A question from someone who's logged in as David Attenborough. I don't know if that's a pseudonym or if they're actually called David Attenborough just by chance, but the question is, what is transport like and how long would one need to cover these destinations / national parks?
Yeah, David is actually a friend of mine, and it's a South African David Attenborough. Hi, David. David, yeah, so it is quite slow going. You need 4x4s to get around Ethiopia. So we generally do an 18-day circuit around Ethiopia, which gets us about 500 or so species when we do it during the southern summer. So there's definitely some long drives and some rough roads, but you see some incredible countryside. Still, almost a taste of going back to medieval era in much of Ethiopia. So it's a fun trip.
Another question around travel. How safe is it to travel?
Certain parts of Ethiopia sometimes do get disrupted by civil unrest, banditry, and so on. We have very good partners on the ground, so we always know which areas are safe and not safe. So like anywhere in the world, you got to be aware of where to go and where not to go, and we do adjust our tours with that latest information at hand. We've never really had and we've done probably 300 or 400 tours to Ethiopia, I'm guessing, over the last 25 years. We've never had a serious incident. We've had a few adventures, no doubt. But yeah, it wouldn't be the easiest country to self-drive in.
Right. There's a nice segue there into another question from Paula Senizo. And Paula wants to know, do you arrange tours to Ethiopia? How do we find out more? And when is the best time to visit?
Okay, yes, we do arrange tours to Ethiopia. My company's name is Rock Jumper Birding Tours, rockjumper.com. We're based here in KZN. We arrange tours throughout the world. We're the largest bird tour company operating in about 120 countries. And our Ethiopia tours generally run in the southern summer, which is also the drier time of year, because Ethiopia can be quite a mess during the winter rains. So our tours generally run from November through to March. And another reason why it's a great time is also because the Palearctic migrants are around, and there's very large numbers of migrants come down into Ethiopia.
Yeah, I was going to say in my intro that we're very lucky to have Adam, because he is literally one of South Africa's best birding exports, and his company is the leading tour company globally for these kinds of tours. So I think you're selling yourself a little bit short there, Adam, but I thought I'd just fill in the blanks for you.
Thank you.
So Mike always asked, it's a very big country, and it's difficult to be able to see everything perhaps in one trip. So if you had to prioritize certain areas or certain things in Ethiopia, what would your advice be?
So definitely the highlands. The Bali Mountains are the best area of highlands, and you'll get most of the endemic birds and the wolf on the highlands and the forests of the Bali Mountains, combined with the Rift Valley lakes, and then the far south of Ethiopia for species such as the Streseman's bush crow and the white-winged swallow. If you got additional time, then you can visit the Simian Mountains for species like Ankabasiran and the Walia ibex. And then the Omo Valley has a few additional species like dusky babbler and so on, but that's more of a cultural trip than a birding trip. And then Awash National Park, also in the Rift Valley, is a really good site. So that should be included in the essential places to visit, and that's for the more bushvelty kind of species.
Okay, excellent advice. A question from Mike Bridgeford down in the Garden Route. He says, what is the accommodation condition like on a typical Ethiopian trip?
So it used to be very, very basic. And some of the worst places I've ever stayed in my life have been in Ethiopia. But it's improved tremendously over the last 20 something years that I've been visiting Ethiopia. And the country has modernized quite significantly. So, some of the more remote areas, we still stay in some fairly basic local hotels. But through most of the sites now, there are tourist standard hotels and lodges. And Addis Ababa itself has, some really luxurious 5-star international hotel groups there now.
I'm sure you have some very hair-raising stories from your travels around Africa.
And probably most of them are from Ethiopia. I've had some wild experiences there in the early days, but it's been fun.
Question from me. I mean, would you ever consider writing a book about your travels and journeys around the world and around Africa?
Yeah, I'm actually planning to write a book. So one of my goals was to see all the bird families of the world. So nearly 11,000 bird species have been divided into 254 bird families. So no one can see all the birds of the world, but it is possible to see all the bird families. And that's kind of what I've actually been prioritizing, is to see these bird families. And I've actually just finally got my last one about 2 weeks ago in Australia, the Plains Wanderer. And I was waiting to do that before I started writing this book of my adventures, seeing all these different bird families. So it will include many of the adventures that I've had in Ethiopia over the years.
Excellent. You put me down for a signed copy, Adam.
Absolutely.
All right. A couple of questions here around conservation in the country. Firstly, what is it about Ethiopian culture that discourages killing birds? And secondly, is there any major threat that you could comment on to the habitats that you depicted in your talk?
Yeah, so similar to India, which is also very highly densely populated, they just don't have a culture of killing and disturbing birds. I don't know whether it's part of their very ancient Christian culture or what it is, but the only two places in the world really where I can say birds are just super chilled are Ethiopia and India, and they live in amongst these seething populations of people. That obviously doesn't preclude habitat damage. So when I first started going to Ethiopia 20 odd years ago, there were sort of 40, 50 million people. There's now 120 million people. The population is just incredible. And I haven't been for some few years now, but even areas that are just absolute wildernesses where we'd be seeing lions and other megafauna, you go back sort of 10 years later and it's just farms or even cities. So habitat destruction is very, very serious in Ethiopia. And as in India, I don't think there's any national parks in Ethiopia where there's more wild animals than domestic animals. So people live in the parks, and the species that are there have to either survive with people or they're going to become extinct, which is sadly what's almost happened to white-winged flufftail. I saw there was a question about white-winged flufftails. Yeah. And originally we only thought white-winged flufftails bred in Ethiopia, and they were known from quite a few marshes in Ethiopia, but virtually every single one of those has
I seem to have lost Adam. I'm not sure if anyone else has. Perhaps pop a message in the chat box. Yeah, it appears to have happened to Adam this time. Okay, Adam, you're back. You just need to unmute yourself there. I don't know if you had some internet issues. All right. Seems we're struggling with Adam's connection now. At least we got through most of them. There were just a sprinkling of questions left. He was talking about white-winged flufftails and Burger wetland. Adam is one of the trustees of the Middelpunt Wetland Trust, which is a charitable trust that looks after flufftail conservation. He also sponsors one of our positions at BirdLife South Africa. My friend Dr. Carl Lloyd is the Rock Jumper Fellow of White-winged Flufftail Conservation. So Adam is well qualified to talk about the topic. Adam, are you back with us? I seem to be struggling with your video. Yeah, it still looks a bit like Adam is struggling. Oh, well, I think we've had a good run of it. Eskom is not allowing us to carry on here, unfortunately. Burger wetland is in not a brilliant way. There are conservation interventions currently ongoing at Burger, but things could be better. Adam, are you back?
Yes, I'm hopefully back. I don't know what happened there.
I was just explaining that you're both a trustee of the Middelpunt Wetland Trust, which looks after flufftails, and you sponsor a flufftail conservation position at BirdLife South Africa. because you cut out just as you were talking about white-winged flufftails and their breeding.
Yes, so basically, fortunately, they've been found to breed in South Africa as well, because if they were only occurring in Ethiopia, they'd be in serious trouble.
There we go. David, again, would like to know, when you're referring to lions, are these Barbary lions?
So the Barbary lion is an extinct species, and that's from northwest Africa, so Morocco, Tunisia, that area. Although they believe that there's still some Barbary lion genetics existing in some zoo specimens. The Ethiopian lion is sometimes considered different genetically to
Oh dear, seems we're losing Adam again. Sorry about this, folks. Seems we've been cut off, but there were a couple of last questions, one about other rock jumper tours, another one about the prices of tours. So I encourage you to go to rockjumper.com and look at Adam's website, find out all about the tours that they run. They run literally all over the world. Books on the shelves, someone's asked, are they all birding books? Bernard, Adam has probably the largest private bird book collection or birding library in the world. So yes, those are likely all birding or at least natural history books in the background. Adam, you with us? I was just explaining.
Sorry, I seem to be cutting out. I don't know how much you heard about my lion answer.
Yeah, I think we got all of it and then you cut.
Okay.
I was just explaining to Bernard, who asked about your library in the background, how you have one of the largest private birding and nature library collections in the world.
Yeah, no, I love my books, and especially bird books and natural history books. So I've been fortunate enough to gather a great collection.
Great. And I was just explaining for the remaining questions that if people want to find out more about the tours that you run to Ethiopia and elsewhere in the world, they can just go to rockjumper.com or rockjumperbirding.com, and they'll find everything there, right?
Perfect. Yes.
Cool. Well, I think we'll cut it there then, before we lose each other once more. But
apologies for that. I don't know what's going on.
If it's not you, it's me. So I think quickly we'll wrap up and just say thank you so much, Adam. That was really enjoyable. We're really glad to have you in the series of talks. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I know we all did.
It was great. Thank you very much for hosting, and thank you everyone for attending. And enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow again. Cheers.
Bye.